You're listening to Secret Sonics, a podcast exploring the creative side of music production. Hello and welcome back to Secret Sonics. I am your host, Ben Wallach. My guest today is IVEEN. IVEEN is a musician / singer-songwriter from Atlanta, Georgia, USA. She is of Irish heritage, and she grew up playing traditional Irish music with her father and siblings, touring all over the U.S. and Ireland, playing at Irish festivals since she was 10 years old. She plays the Celtic harp, electric harp, recently started using guitar effects pedals on the harp, piano, guitar, tin whistle, Irish flute, uilleann pipes, otherwise known as Irish bagpipes, concertina, and various other instruments. Later on, IVEEN learned Spanish and started touring all over South America with the band out of Monterrey, Mexico for 2 years. She got really into traditional and pop Middle Eastern music and learned enough Arabic to be able to sing and play some of her favorite Arabic songs. Those ended up going viral on social media. She now is focusing on learning more about music production and is working on a project that features the electric harp mixed with electronic music with producer and former Secret Sonics guest Derek Atwater. The project is almost a year in the making and will start touring in the U.S. summer of 2020. Music video premiere for this project will be in February. Derek, who I mentioned was previously on the show, recommended I have IVEEN on, and what I've heard of hers online sounds amazing. So it's an honor to introduce IVEEN to the show. Welcome.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
For sure. By the way, I am also honored to tell you that you are the first female guest on the show, and I am thrilled about that.
Whoop, whoop.
It's been a long time needing to happen, and it's like, yeah, it's awesome.
Hey, I'm grateful to be here. That's awesome.
For sure. So tell us a bit about you. Who are you? What do you do?
Well, like the bio said, I am a multi-instrumentalist. I play a bunch of weird instruments because I grew up playing a lot of traditional Celtic Irish music. And if you're not familiar with that, Celtic music comes from Ireland, Scotland, Wales, kind of just that part of the world. But if you hear the word Celtic, that's usually where that's coming from. So Celtic music, and over time I started learning just other cultural world-influenced music over time. And yeah, I mean, I love Celtic music. I love world music. I love electronic music. And recently I started producing and songwriting, really just anything music related, because to me, music has been kind of my passport to the world. You know, like a lot of people have their ways of traveling and reasons to travel and see the world. But for me, music has kind of been a passport and like a reason, and it's given me a lot of capabilities of traveling that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to do. So that's yeah.
Traveling is a passion of yours?
For sure, yeah. I really love traveling and seeing what's out there and seeing the rest of the world.
Yeah, and it's funny. I recently got to see Russia and Kazakhstan on tour, which
cool.
is places I never thought I'd get to go, and it's like, how did like music take me here? Like it's crazy what it can do.
That's amazing. I would love to go there too.
So what does it look like to be a solo artist these days? What do you think somebody getting started in 20 needs to be thinking about doing? What are you doing?
Whew, that is a big question. I mean, I would say one thing that's really nice about living in the times we're living in with the internet and social media as a solo artist, independent artist with no record label, what's great about social media is you can use all these different platforms to reach thousands and thousands, if not millions of people on the internet to really put your music out there and get people interested in it. But the hard part is that there's so much competition. There's so many other artists. There's so many other producers doing essentially, I would say, the same thing, even though we're all doing different versions of that thing. We're all kind of doing the same thing. And to get viewers and listeners interested, I think, is the hard part, because there's such a huge amount of new music coming out daily, thousands and thousands of new songs and new artists coming up. It's just like, it's really hard to stand out. And I would say for me, it's taken me a long time to find a niche, a niche kind of like brand.
Yeah.
However you say that. Niche.
Yeah, I think I pronounce it niche, but whatever works.
That's probably correct. I'm all over the place. But finding your niche and finding something that works for you is the hardest part, because as creatives, I think, we tend to kind of get stuck in the same place, or stuck in like a habit, or stuck in like one box. And then some of us tend to do too many things. And it's really hard to find a balance between all of the things we love and all of the things that make us unique in order to have a product that makes sense to listeners. So it's a combination of all of those things. Being good at your craft is, I think, the first thing. Getting really, really good at what you do. Second of all, finding something visually and audibly that makes you stand out. You have to stand out. Otherwise, you're just going to blend into all the other artists. And then really being passionate about what you do, I think, is really important, because people can tell that. They can tell if you really love what you're doing, or if you're just doing it to make money. A lot of artists I've seen, they've kind of changed who they are musically just to fit what a label is telling them to do, because a label says this is what sells, so you should be this, and you should sing about this, and you should wear this. So it's really hard to balance those things, because you do end up becoming a product. You do have to sell what you're doing and sell the music and sell your brand. So finding a balance between all of that is really difficult, and it just takes, I've found it's taken a lot of time to get where I am as far as branding and, sound goes. But yeah, I think it's just a combination of all those things.
Wow. So you've been on this journey for like a year now?
Yes. For this project I'm working on, about a year now. Yeah.
And what were you doing before this?
Like I said in my bio, I did a lot of world music. I was on tour in Mexico doing Spanish music. After that, came back to the States and just got really interested in like Hindi and Arabic music. I find it very interesting because, and most of the music...
Quarter tones, right?
Quarter
like all the
tones, like, quarter tones and semitones, and you're using 442 instead of 440, like...
oh, really?
Yeah, dude, so many, like, it's so interesting to look into all these different types of music to me. And, because I was classically trained, and I never had to read music with quarter tones in it. So it was immediately very interesting to me to kind of start learning about these types of music. And they're very ancient. And the fact that they're so ancient, and they were the first types and forms of music that existed that we know of. And learning the history of that was really cool. So I started doing that, got really into that. And then I met these cats out of Atlanta when I moved back here, who did like Motown, jazz, like 60s music. And I got really into like 60s music, and I recorded a whole album actually on tape. We recorded a whole album with no computer. No computer involved. No DAW.
Sounds like a dream.
Yeah.
Nostalgic dream.
Dude, it was so cool. So I did that.
Where'd you record this?
I recorded it at a studio in Atlanta. At the time, they were called In-Crowd Studios. I don't know what they're called now. They've changed their name a few times. But they're just a bunch of cool cats out of Atlanta that do that. They do like 60s jazz Motown stuff.
Mm-hmm. And you were singing?
I was singing, and I was writing the music.
Wow. So to get from world music into like Motown and then back into kind of like more world music is like an interesting trip.
Yeah, it's been a trip, that's for sure. I mean, and I guess what kind of got me out of Motown was that, kind of like what I was saying before about how labels kind of influence you to do something. It's like, while I was doing it, I really enjoyed it, but I was finding more and more that I was kind of doing it because these people were cool to me, and I wanted to be like them, but I didn't feel like I was being true to myself and what I truly liked. So I started kind of getting out of it and getting back into my Celtic roots, which really, like what I was talking to you about, is like, I feel like the older you get and the more you learn about yourself and the music you make, you start going back to your childhood and what influenced you as a child. And what influenced me was Celtic music. So mixing what I love now with what I used to do as a child has been really, really fulfilling and awesome.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I asked you to send me some of your favorite productions, and we kind of had a I miscommunicated what I really meant, but you wrote back to me something really interesting, and I'll just read it on the air because it's cool. The only staples of favorites in my life are the things I liked as a kid: Moonlight Sonata, Beethoven, and Molly Band by the Chieftains, and Alison Krauss. I've been listening to these since I was a baby, and they never got old to me. They always make me feel emotional and tap into my soul like no other piece of music. There are a few other pieces like this, but for me, these are the main ones. I find myself often writing pieces that have similar tones to these because I believe that our psyches tap into the music we first started loving most as children. Especially as we develop more and more as creators and producers, we get even closer to our childhood nostalgic influences. And I read that. I was like, wow, this is so interesting, because I literally this week started playing my son Rafi, who I grew up listening to, and then I'm listening to this music and it's really tripping me out because it's like somewhere deep down in my psyche, this music has been like hibernating for like 30 years, and like it's just like, wow, I really relate even to the production, like even to like how it's like, you know, laid out, and it's amazing what like the childhood can do.
Exactly.
I don't really think about my childhood very much. No offense, mom and dad, if you're listening to this episode. I don't like pre-teenagers. I don't think about it on a day-to-day basis. But I don't know if do you?
I mean, I only do in times like this where it's brought up. I mean, why would we think about it all the time? We're adults now, and I think when you have your own child, I think that's probably something that brings it out too. You know, when I'm around children, I feel my inner child come out a lot more because I can speak to them in that language. My inner childhood language still exists somewhere, but I don't know. I guess the nostalgic thing is there for most musicians, and I think it's true that any producer that's out there creating music and learning and building as a producer at some point had to love music or love some type of music and artist. All of us were influenced by something, or influenced or set on fire. There was some type of spark that like lit in us as children. I think most of us, I know there are a lot of producers out there that probably started later on in life and maybe didn't really love music at a younger age, but I feel like most of us probably had some type of childhood influence that really kind of clicked in our brain and said, oh, wow, I really want to do this in some capacity. And for some of us, it looked like, you know, picking up a guitar first or learning piano or something small. And it kind of turned into an avalanche of like, okay, I love all of this, and now I want to get into the nitty gritty, like, and become the Wizard of Oz, like the guy behind the curtain, as opposed to the you know, projection of the wizard on the screen. So it's very interesting.
What was your moment? What was that light, that you know, matchstick moment for you?
For me, I would say probably one of my earliest memories of loving music was when I was very little. I was at a symphony, and my dad was holding me, and there was just a really, really beautiful piece being played. I think it was the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra. I don't remember what piece it was because I was probably 4 or 5 years old. But my dad was holding me, and I just remember crying. Like, I just started crying and crying.
Wow.
But it wasn't that I was sad. It was that I was moved. And it was just such a beautiful sound that I started crying. And my dad was holding me thinking there was something wrong, but I was actually happy.
Wow.
And for me, I guess my whole musical journey has been kind of trying to find that again. Like, I love
the
pieces.
soul, that moment.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, like that. You know, I told you I work with Derek on music, and he always gets frustrated with me because I really love emotional, like sadder music, or I guess what Americans would call sad as far as minor keys go. You know, like in most American music, a minor key usually means a sadder song. But for me, I grew up listening to Celtic music, and then later on, you know, more Middle Eastern music and influences where minor tones don't necessarily mean sad. They just are, they're just minor tones that could be happy or sad. And it's very interesting that different cultures have this different perspective of what a minor and major keys, or, you know, what these keys make you feel. And I think it all has to do with your culture and how you were raised and what it means to you. It doesn't necessarily for every type of music mean that this is going to be sad. So going back to what I was saying is,
right. They have a lot more notes also.
They have
right?
a lot more notes.
A chord could be a completely different thing in Eastern music.
Exactly. It could mean a different emotion too. And for me, I guess I tend to gravitate towards minor keys because they tap into my soul more. They make me feel